What is up, guys? Marcellus Williams, aka TheSwolefessor, to educate you on health and social well-being. And today, guys, we're going to be talking about the three main factors that determine how strong somebody can potentially be. So the reason I'm doing this video, guys, is because I get often asked, bro, how'd you get as strong as you are? Or, hey, bro, how can I get my strength up? Or, hey, bro, how do I know how strong I can be? How can I know when I'm reaching my just genetic potential for strength? So that's pretty much why I'm doing this video, because I just think it's a very interesting topic, and there is quite a bit that goes into it, but these are the main three things that people have to consider and keep in mind when looking at different things. Because a lot of people have the idea that it's just, a lot of it's just based off weight class, which is why they'll get like just shocked when somebody in my weight class is outlifting somebody who maybe weighs 180 or 200 pounds, even though they only weigh 160 pounds. And even though weight is part of it, there's other factors that go into it. So let's get started. The number one factor we're gonna start with is, of course, weight. Now, when I refer to weight, guys, I don't just mean your weight on the scale. I'm talking about the total amount of muscle mass that you have, for the mere fact that, as you guys know, if you've been with this channel long enough, a bigger muscle is a stronger muscle. Keep in mind, we're talking about natural lifters only. So basically, as a natural lifter, as you guys know, in order to get stronger, you must get bigger. Hypertrophy and strength go hand in hand. And if you guys need to have a recap and go over that video that I did, giving you all the scientific facts and research behind the connection between strength and muscle mass, I'll link it down below so that you guys can check that out. But basically, as a muscle gets bigger, it gets stronger, and as a muscle gets stronger, it gets bigger. So that's why on average, you see bigger, stronger, more muscular dudes lifting more than smaller dudes. Even if they are both relatively muscular, a bigger dude, someone who's, 6'1", 220 pounds at 10% body fat, is probably has a lot more absolute muscle than someone like myself, who's only like 160 pounds. If I am, let's say, about 10% body fat, even if we relatively have the same amount of muscle mass for our frame, he has more absolute muscle mass, and therefore he's probably gonna be able to lift more total weight. Why? Well, muscle is what produces force in our bodies, and therefore, if you have more muscle, you can produce more force, therefore you can lift more weight. So that's pretty simple, pretty straightforward, and that's why we have things like weight classes when it comes to like strength sports, such as like, Olympic weightlifting, powerlifting, just because it would be a little unfair to expect somebody who, is 200 pounds and then take somebody like in my weight class and expect them to lift around the same amount of weight, just because he's more often than not will have more total muscle mass. Now we can look at different things. For example, like if somebody weighs 180 pounds, but they're at a higher body fat percentage, or maybe they don't lift weights at all, then once again, that's why you can't look at it just as weight, because someone like me who's 160 pounds, but has been lifting for 6 years, doing calisthenics for 12, is probably gonna be a lot stronger than someone who may be 180 pounds, but has only been lifting for about a year or so, just because I probably have more total muscle mass, regardless of him weighing more. His weight's probably due to things like, his bones, fat, etc. So when people have the mindset of like, oh, it's just about how much you weigh, not necessarily. There's other factors that go into it, which are what we're gonna get into next. So the second thing is gonna be, guys, pretty much just your overall genetic makeup. Now, this includes your height, and then things like your leverages, like your limb lengths, how long your arms are, how long your legs are, as well as things like that we can't necessarily see, things like your muscle insertions, where they insert. When I did my video over genetics, well, it does and doesn't affect, I talked about how oftentimes the reason you may see a dude who's like smaller but just lifting insane amounts of weight, maybe like, let's do something like Max Tuning, for example, or even the Ant. I don't know if you guys know who he is for powerlifting, but like the dude is like weighs less than me, but deadlifts insane amounts of weight, and a lot of it has to do with things like leverages. Like some people are just built well to squat, some people are built well to deadlift, some people are built well to bench. Usually, like, there's a reason that people who squat a lot of weight oftentimes tend to be like shorter, stockier dudes. If you're short, but you have like thick legs, and you're, based off your muscle insertions, things like that, it may be easier for you to squat more. Why? Well, you don't have to go as far of a range of motion as someone who's maybe like, 6'1", for example, very lanky arms and legs. Now, this isn't to say that all tall people necessarily have bad leverages. Once again, it just depends on the lift. For example, my leverages aren't exactly optimal for bench pressing, just because my arms are actually fairly long. You guys can't even see that. My arms are actually fairly long for somebody my height. A lot of like great bench pressers in my weight class have shorter arms than I do. But once again, other factors go into it, things like muscle insertions, and then of course, like we just talked about, like the size of the muscle. I have a fairly decent sized chest, so that goes into it as well. So when you think about things like, leverages, limb length, etc., and like where your muscles insert, it's easy to kind of have a better understanding of like, okay, well, yeah, this guy may weigh a little bit less, but he has more optimum leverages for the lift, therefore he's able to perform it a little bit more efficiently. So that has to play into it as well. And that goes with other lifts, even like, Weighted pull-ups, for example. A lot of people just assume like, okay, if a person weighs less, he's gonna be able to bust out more pull-ups. And with all other factors being equal, that's probably true. If you weigh less, it's gonna be easier for you to perform pull-ups. When we start thinking about things like, you know, weighted pull-ups, weighted dips, adding weights to things, there's reasons that guys who are lighter than me may not be able to still pull quite as much on weighted pull-ups or dips as I can. And a lot of that, once again, can either have to do with insertions. A lot of it has to do with the fact that I've just been training the movement longer. A lot of it may have to do with the fact that even if I weigh more, I may have more total muscle mass, which helps me with performing that lift. So there's different things that go into it. This isn't something to get too caught up on, just from the fact that you have no real way of knowing it. No one's gonna be able to tell you your exact muscle insertions unless you're dead and they cut you open, in which case the information doesn't really help you out that much. And then you never exactly can know. Like, we can kind of look at someone, or maybe like, you know, do studies and kind of see like, okay, yeah, he seems really built really well for this lift, but how much of that comes from the fact that he's just built well, or how long he's been training on the lift? A lot of that, you know, has a lot to do with it as well and goes into it, which leads me into my third point, which is pretty much in part genetic, but also in part due to training, which is simply neuromuscular efficiency. Basically, how well your nervous system is able to activate muscles to produce and reduce force. That's pretty much what neuromuscular efficiency is. Now, there is a genetic component to this. Some people simply just get stronger at a better and faster rate, even if they put on like the same amount of muscle. And what do I mean by that? Well, as I said, remember guys, this is relative to yourself. In order to get stronger, you have to get bigger. In order to get bigger, you have to get stronger, but understand that there is a neuromuscular component to it as well. Meaning, even though I've already done, you know what, I'm just gonna link this video down below. You know what, I'm gonna link all three videos down below. The connection between strength and muscle mass, my video of what all genetics do and don't affect, and then my video over rep ranges. Because as I've explained, rep ranges in themselves have nothing to do with how your hypertrophy is. Your total volume does, meaning 10 sets of 3 with 100 pounds is no difference than 3 sets of 10 with 100 pounds. They're the same total workload. They're going to equal the same total muscle mass and overall hypertrophy. However, there are certain performance elements aspects to working in different rep ranges. If you're working with 15, 20 reps, that's obviously going to work more on your conditioning, your endurance. If you're working with lower rep ranges like singles, doubles, triples, that's going to have more emphasis on power and speed. So when we keep that in mind, the way that you train your neuromuscular efficiency is by training with heavier weight for less reps. Why? Because you're focusing more on explosiveness and on proper form and moving the most amount of weight that you possibly can. When you're training with higher reps, it gets hard to do that. Why? Because your body gets fatigued faster. That's why whenever you see people doing like, you know, heavy amounts of weight, it's usually for things like triples, doubles, singles, things like that. And anything where we get more like the 5 rep range and above is more like, you know, what people see is more like hypertrophy work. But as I said, that's a misconception as far as like, you know, oh, the 8 to 12 rep range, the hypertrophy rep range. You guys can check that video out to get more details on that. But the bottom line is, that's how you can train that in that way. That's why oftentimes, you know, even though a power lifter and a bodybuilder may be about the same size or maybe even have the same amount of muscle, the power lifter trains for power because he trains in that rep range. He trains his neuromuscular efficiency, therefore he's probably gonna be able to lift a little bit more weight. Now, with that being said, like I said, part of that is genetic. There's a genetic aspect to it. And getting back to that, so basically 2 people, right, can put on 5 pounds of muscle, right? Let's say they put on 5 pounds of muscle and it goes, let's just say hypothetically, to their chest. Okay, there's still a genetic component to how strong they'll each get in doing that. One person can maybe put, let's not use pounds. Let's say one person adds 2 inches to his chest, another person adds 5 inches to his chest, right? Well, the person that adds 2 inches to his chest could gain, let's say 10, 15 pounds on his bench press from doing that. Whereas the person who added 5 inches to his chest may only gain 8 pounds to his bench press, because it just depends on you genetically. Meaning we can both add the same amount of size to our chest, but my bench may go up higher than what yours does in relation to it. Or in the opposite extreme, we may both get our bench to 315 pounds, but my chest may grow 5 inches from doing that. Yours may grow 2 inches from doing that. So even though we both had to get stronger in order to grow, and as we both grow, we got stronger, the rate at which each happens is genetic. And that's the genetic component that everyone has to keep in mind and understand that and that's another problem and misconception with people thinking, oh, if I hit these certain numbers on the big 3, or if I hit these certain numbers on a lift, it's gonna grow, you know, me to this potential. Why? Oh, well, this dude can bench 315 pounds and he has a big chest. So if I get to where I can bench 315 pounds, it means I'm gonna have the same size chest. Not necessarily. Your chest will definitely grow. It has to. If you go from benching 225 from reps to 315 for reps, I guarantee you your chest will grow. It has no choice but to do so. However, how much it grows is going to be relative to you and your genetics. There's nothing you can do about that. That's why the whole point of kind of this whole video, guys, with looking at all these things is to understand that if you notice, most of these things are things that you have no control over. They're things that, they're just factors that you're born with. There's nothing that you can do to change them. The best thing you can do is train for your goals. So if your goal is simply to just get stronger, understand that you may not get as strong at the same rate as somebody else, even if you're doing the same program, but that's okay. Focus on you and focus on your own progression. If your goal is to get bigger than what you currently are, understand that you can be on the most perfect hypertrophy program in the world, but you may not get the same results as somebody else. So long as you're focusing though on getting stronger, you will get bigger, and if you're getting bigger, you will also get stronger. But those are the different factors that go into how strong someone can be. So for a quick recap, your total amount of muscle mass, your genetics in terms of like, your limb length, your muscle insertions, how well you are with neuromuscular efficiency, because there's a genetic component to it. And then the other part of that component is just training for strength, training for power, training for explosiveness. That's going to help you get stronger in the long run. Now, mind you, like I said, if somebody does 3 sets of 10 with 100 pounds and someone does 10 sets of 3 with 100 pounds, they both focus on just progressively overloading. Even though they're doing the same amount of total workload, the person who's working in the rep range for triples, using triples, is probably going to be a little bit stronger. Even though they're both going to get stronger, they're both going to grow, the person who's working with triples is probably going to be a little bit stronger just because they're training in a rep range that is ideal for building up strength and power. So that's pretty much it, guys. That's it for this video. I hope it was informative. I hope to help you all out. If it did, go ahead and leave a comment down below. Let me know that it did. If it did not, leave a comment down below. Let me know what I can do to get better. Like the video, share, subscribe. Keep it simple, specific, scientific. I'll catch y'all later.